The mule is described as being perhaps a man, but could be many men. And it's a good comment on political side of things, but also it serves as an in to Harry Seldon's character.
But it's also it's also but you also have to recognize too, and I don't know if you've ever read the Foundation trilogy. Both the
Yes.
Mule and Harry Seldon, although my Harry Seldon is spelled differently, and a few other characters are plucked straight from the Asimov's Foundation trilogy. They're put into the real 20th century and sort of turned sideways. Harry Seldon is the cyber, or not the cyber, the psychohistorian of the Foundation trilogy. Here, he's just a second-rate hood who is the nominal head, but doesn't know. So, if you don't, it works. My Foundation works if you have no idea who Asimov is or that it's what it's playing off of. But if you do, it's again twisting something, a major work. Probably most people would say, at least for American science fiction, it's one of the, if not the foundational thing of sci-fi, the Foundation trilogy.
The narrative, though, is far more predictable. You know that you will eventually meet the mule and that you'll get an into his character, whereas the mule is never really revealed throughout the whole of a Norwegian in the family.
Yeah.
Like you said, there's many possibilities. But the thing about that is, with comparisons to the Isaac Asimov creations, is it plays off of that, but it also, I mean, the mule and goals go way down in this story. He's trying to conquer galaxies in Isaac Asimov's work, and here he's just trying to conquer a routine racket.
Well, I mean, he's not trying to. He's not trying to. I mean, he's trying to knock out the mafia nationwide. So this is a big deal. I mean, and we find out in this book that, in at least in this universe of mine, that the Foundation are the people that killed John F. Kennedy. But the nice twist that I put on it is that they killed John F. Kennedy not because they had anything against him, no conspiracy against him. They do it as a press distraction, so that the press is following them while they then launch an attack on Mafia ports on the East Coast. So we find out later that several dozen key mob figures from families up and down the East Coast have been killed off in this war between the Foundation, which is presumably, what we find out is a more egalitarian bunch of crooks that hire people on a mercenary basis rather than a familial basis. So it's a counterpart evil to the Mafia. The Mafia, if you look at it, would be, say, more like tribalism, whereas this is more professionals. The Foundation is, in a sense, has more in common with Nazism or socialism. These people are cultists who are either they're mercenaries or true believers, although we find out that the true believers think it's a load of shit and they're basically out for money. But the interesting thing is that the JFK assassination is an afterthought. It's just a means to an end that the mule has, although we don't know who the mule really is. The mule is posited as any one of a half a dozen small hoods, or it could be some major mob figures from Chicago. It could be Lou Wasserman, the super agent, or Howard Hughes, and all of them are plausible possibilities. We have one scene where we see the mule putatively, is where I think it's Jack Ruby is kidnapped when he's being transferred between prisons, and he meets the mule, who sends him, I guess, to kill Kennedy or whatnot, or maybe it's after the Kennedy thing, and we see the display of strength that this mule has, which is similar to the Foundation, where the mule is supposedly has superhuman strength too. But other than that, we don't really find out anything about it. He has this cult-like personality. He's written this book called The Brown Book that we never hear from. Because one of the things I didn't want to, I had done in an earlier book called The Trials of Horacio Guzman, I did a sci-fi book that was being read by the main character, and it's in a different style than the main narrative. I didn't want to have that because it's insanity. I didn't want to waste time writing something insane. So when the mule has his minions reading these anarchist tracts or other political gobbledygook, it shows the level of the mind that must be behind this Brown book.
And you have several philosophical tomes in which you have the characters read. Harry Seldon reads one, and then he plays off the psychic abilities of the Mule too, where he's in Harry Seldon's head when he's nodding off in between reading it.
Yeah.
So it has that play off of too. Those are used, by the way, we should make a point that the public domain material that you use, a vast majority of it is very poor writing, especially the philosophy, which is dull, but it has a point to it that is used within the context of the characters reading it.
And also, I'm just looking early on here. I'm just looking at the scene between Harry Seldon and Tony Luff, where Tony Luff starts singing his own praises. Literally, he's going, "He's a thriller, a killer. We said a killer diller. He's Tony Luff." I mean, this is the level of people that even the foundation has to deal with. But anyway.
So the Tony Luft is a good example too of spreading about. We'll talk about several different characters who come back within this book from the previous book, but some of my favorite moments are just very small moments where a character transitions in and out. One that was particularly sticks out to me was the Norwegian was looking at a bunch of at the sea, and he was thinking of all sorts of philosophical ideas, and then it transitions to Sonny Liston, the eyes of Sonny Liston, and you realize that this is an excellent way to get behind the eyes of a character, showing the difference between all of them in what they see. Because Jessica has a great line in one of her books in which she says that she wouldn't mind seeing what a character sees, but not how. And the how that these characters see are vastly different than the others, and they're usually very limited, but they serve as a great into those characters. What do you think of that, and how do those transitions come about? Because I will say, especially in this book, and then it gets even more so later on, the narrative kind of goes in and out. It's just as if in a movie where you'll have a scene play out and then transition to the next scene.
A lot of that was just happenstance. If you put yourself in a certain frame of mind, and I was writing when I was writing to Alex Sherman this morning about his observations about my spy book. In the end of that book, I end with a scene where the main spy character gets dumped by his girlfriend, who's 30-something years younger than him, and we see him looking, remembering going to visit the art forger Elmer DeHory, who was featured in the Orson Welles film F for Fake, as he's about to go to jail. And what Hory says gets an answer from Elias Walker, the spy, but it turns out the next reply comes from the girlfriend, because it's like that fade transition. And that's something that at the moment that I was typing it, and I did the first and last chapters of that book at the end, because I knew what the story in between, how to get into it and then get out of it, and do that at the end. That literally came to me in a second. I didn't plan it, but I knew right away that was the right way to go. A lot of these things, if you're thinking organically and you're just putting things together, and like it's like if you have a ceramic wheel and you're spinning the ceramic, and you just take another glob of clay and slap it on, and your fingers know what they're doing before you do. You put yourself in a position where you can take advantage of things that by overwriting or by overplotting you can't do. And so a lot of these things that you would say, well, how do you do that or whatnot? It happens. Now I make the circumstances that allow that organic happening to come out of the blue. That's the important thing, not necessarily the thing. So, and this is a very important thing for writers to do, is don't always, and I get a lot of young writers that want to overplot things and say, oh, I have to have, at 70% in, I have to do this. I have to, at 85% of the story, I need to do that. No, put yourself in the position where you have things coming together and you're able to instantaneously make that choice, left, right, up, down, black, white, whatever it might be. If you open yourself up to have those those moments where you've whittled 2,000 possible things down to just 3 or 4. You can make the right decision easily, but you don't have to be thinking about it over and over and have it hanging over your head. Oh, I have to, on page 428, I'm having the denouement, so I have to go back to page 172 and add this in. No, that's going to ossify the text. What you need to do is have these little moments of creativity be ready to burst out at a given moment. I don't know the particulars of the moment you're talking about, but I can tell you that probably 9 times out of 10, those are spontaneous things that as I'm typing away, oh, here's Big Frank talking to his lover. Oh, transition to Big Frank 3 years ago, something happening that somehow ties in. Because that's the way things naturally happen. We don't in real life, at least I don't, and I've never met anyone who's ever claimed to, think, well, today I'm going to go to work and I'm going to, at 4:27, 33 minutes before my shift, and speak to my boss about something so that I can open up to him because I feel he's someone who could understand some trauma that happened to me 23 years ago when I was molested by the priest. No, what happens is you get things that just float together, and maybe if someone you work with, a coworker at a bar you become friendly with, they tell you about, my mother beat me when I was a child, and you just happen to open up about being molested by the priest, let's say, and that's how two people might connect. But it's because things have happened organically in a relationship that those moments happen. And in this way, this book again recapitulates real life. You do not find a lot of the markers there. I'll give you another example. When I was talking to Alex, one of the criticism that Alex had of my spy book was there are 3 or 4 times where the spy is talking about friends he knows that went through some trauma at a job at work, which is similar to what happened to me last year. And in any real world thing, no one's going to know 2 or 3 people from other people that are going to have such similar things happen. But what it does, and what I think Alex didn't realize, was that it sets up that the spy is an unreliable narrator, and in the background of his mind, these things have stuck with him for a particular reason. And I've done that a few times in a book. One time it didn't work was in a book about my character Henry Matsumi, where I was writing about another incident that happened to me at my supermarket job, and it was too much, and I knew to pull out. I pulled out about 7,000 words on Jessica's advice. It's the only time I've ever removed words from a book, but I reused those very words actually in I think the second intermission or the third intermission in this book.
We'll get to that later.
And the reason I did that was because Jessica was right. In the spy book, Alex was wrong about my using that, because I used the lesson that I learned from the book where Jessica told me to pull that out here, and I changed things a little bit, and it's not stated overtly, but it acts I don't have to state that the spy is an unreliable narrator. Things like that show it. Similarly, too, in the spy book, I have his young girlfriend that leaves him at the end. There's scenes where she talks about a cousin of hers who supposedly raped her. Initially, I had the cousin have 2 different names in the 2 different segments, but I thought that would be too obvious to show that the spy was unreliable. So I made the name the same in both of those things. But those things are little ways of showing that the spy is an unreliable narrator. He's not as obviously unreliable as Manny Cole, who's clearly a con artist of some sort. So those are those little things, and those are those things that come organically in writing that are very important to do. You have to, just like people say, luck, is when preparation meets opportunity. It's a cliche, but in certain sense, it's true. In this book, I open up the opportunities for things to happen. For every great transition like that, there are maybe 9 other transitions or possible transitions that I could have had that I didn't take for one reason or another. But you let those that are necessary come to flower. You don't overplan it, but you know when the right opportunity is to pounce on that little fortuity that comes along.